and anger are hateful things, yet the sinner hugs them tightly. Wrath and anger are hateful things, yet the sinner holds on to them tightly. The question for us, all of us, we've experienced in our lives anger, wrath, unforgiveness. We know what it feels like to hold on to this type of wrath and anger. I think the question for us is, what do we do when we feel stuck? What do we do when we experience this type of wrath and anger and unforgiveness? How do we let it go? It's a great question for us all to consider. And I think we have to ask ourselves, or one of the things that we have to be honest about is why we hold on to our anger and unforgiveness. There's a couple of reasons. I think one of them is very simple: fear. We're afraid of being hurt again. And because of that fear and being afraid of being hurt again, it leads to this desire to control, right? If I keep this person who's hurt me at a distance, not close by, but far enough away, they can't hurt me again. So there is this sense of control. There's also in us this burning desire for justice. This person has done something so wrong to me that until they've paid back the debt, you might say, until they've done enough good things, they can't come back into my good graces. I won't treat them like a friend or a family. They'll be an enemy until whatever is owed back to me for this bad thing has been given. So there is a justice side of it too. I think the worst part of our anger and our wrath and our unforgiveness is when we no longer see the person as deserving of mercy. This person is so bad, they don't even deserve love. This person is so bad, they've hurt me so much, they're not even worth loving. So when we ask the question, what is it that gets us stuck? It's these things. These are the things that get us stuck in our anger, our wrath, and our unforgiveness. What do we do about it? What are we to do about it? Well, I think one of the answers is simply we have to desire to be free. We have to desire to be healed. And we hear later in this opening reading from the book of Sirach that can one be healed if they nourish their anger? Or the way it's actually said, if one nourishes their anger, can they expect healing from God? And the answer is simply no. You know, a short story, this past week, very mild, but I was sick. And Tuesday night into Wednesday was the worst, right? So here's what happened. I started to have a sore throat, and it was painful. If you ever had a sore throat where you like swallow your saliva and it feels like a knife is going into your heart, that's what I had. It was awful. I slept terribly. I really don't think I slept at all that night. And so it's 4:30 in the morning. I've had it with this sore throat. I haven't slept. I get out of bed. I open my Spectrum Health app, and I'm like, where's the nearest urgent care that's open that I can go get something for this pain? And then I learned something very interesting. I don't know if you know this, FYI. There's like urgent care virtual option. It's a thing. It's like the best thing. So I noticed that I could go to urgent care over my phone at 5 a.m. I'm like, praise Jesus. So I'm talking to this lady, and she's like, okay, I've made you an appointment at 8 a.m. to get tested for strep and for COVID and all these other things, and then we'll get you medication there. So I'm getting tested negative for strep, praise the Lord, tested negative for COVID, praise the Lord, but then I'm thinking, why am I in pain? And so I look at the lady and I said, this medication you're giving me, is it going to help with the pain? And she goes, well, it should. I said, well, what if it doesn't? Do I just man up? And she says, yeah, man up. And I'm like, okay. And then she said, I wish more people would say that. I'm like, okay, well, thanks be to God, the medication helped, and I felt so much better. But the reason why I tell you this is because Wednesday morning, I would have done anything to feel better. I would have done anything to be healed of a physical, very mild thing. What's the message for us this weekend? We ought to do anything we can to be spiritually and emotionally healed from our anger and our unforgiveness. That's the call to action for us, to want to do anything we can to be free from our anger, wrath, and unforgiveness. So how do we do that? Well, of course, here's where all of my movies examples come into play, and I know you're ready for them. The first one is very simple, Hamilton. I think many of you have seen Hamilton. I love Hamilton. It's one of the best shows. And we know a little bit about his story. It's a real-life story. Hamilton he's a workaholic, so he's not doing enough to cultivate a really good relationship with his wife, and eventually he's unfaithful. There's a lot going on. Their son dies. Their marriage is falling apart. And Hamilton is begging his wife Eliza for a new start, for another chance. And this is what I love about it. We hear in this song, at some point, there's a grace too powerful to name. And Eliza reaches out her hand, she touches Hamilton, and we hear the chorus sing, forgiveness. Can you imagine? Forgiveness. And here's why this is a good example for us. If we want to forgive people, if we want to let go of our anger and our wrath, we can't do it without grace. We need God's help. If we want to be free from all of these things, these hurts, we need God's grace to do it. There's another movie, it's called Scarlet and the Black. Came out in about 1980. How many of you have seen that? Okay. That's kind of what I expected. Well, I'm going to spoil the movie, but I'm sorry, you've had 50 years, okay? Or 43, really, to be exact. So the movie is about, it takes place during World War II. It's in Rome. There's this Irish priest. His name is Monsignor O'Flaherty. And there's this German soldier. His name is Colonel Coupler. And they've occupied Rome, and they're arresting all the Jewish people they can find and sending them to concentration camps. Monsignor O'Flaherty, he's looking for Jewish people to hide them and to get them out of Rome to set them free, so to save their lives. So that's kind of the drama of the movie. The very end of the movie, the war is over, it's ending. Colonel Coupler knows he's going to be arrested because they've lost, but he wants his wife and his children to be safe. And he's worried that the Allied forces, someone's going to take out revenge on his family. So he calls Monsignor O'Flaherty. They have a special meeting. And he begs the priest, please, I know you have ways. Save my wife and my children. And it's this very just emotionally, there's a lot going on in the scene. And Monsignor O'Flaherty just looks at him and says, after all you've done and you want mercy, no. No, you don't get that. And of course, Colonel Coupler says, see, this is why we don't like you Christians. You don't do what you say. You don't follow what you preach. Well, later, we hear that, or we find out that Monsignor O'Flaherty has a kind of changing of heart, and he does. He saves Colonel Coupler's wife and children. There's a reason I bring that up, because there's two things. One, when we talk about forgiveness, so often we think forgiveness means forget and just let the person back in your life with no boundaries. Oh, no. When we forgive, it's choosing to love the person with proper boundaries. And all of us are dealing with hurts and things that not one hurt is the same. So I can't talk about all of those in one homily, but forgiveness is choosing to love this person with proper boundaries. What has Monsignor O'Flaherty done? He's chosen to love Colonel Coupler by saving his family, but also he has to face his consequences, be arrested. But even more so, he's chosen free will choice to forgive Colonel Coupler. When we forgive, if we want to be able to forgive, we need God's grace, and then we need to make a choice. Forgiveness is not an emotion, it's a free will, everyday choice. I will forgive this person today. The final example comes from one of my favorite TV shows, Lost. Who's seen that? See, I thought a few more. Praise the Lord. So Lost is a wonderful show. Again, I'm going to spoil some of it, but you've had like 15 years, so I don't feel that bad. But in the show, there's this character. His name is Benjamin Linus. And Benjamin Linus is just a bad dude. He's a liar. He's a manipulator. He's a murderer. He is about as bad as you can be. And so at the very end of the show, The people on this island, because they're lost, right? They have this makeshift prison, and Benjamin Linus is captured. He's put in the prison. He eventually breaks free. He's running away, and this lady chases him with a gun because she wants to bring him back to the prison. And she corners him, and she looks at him, and she says, "Why would you go back to him?" Now, for those who haven't seen the show, him, that person she's talking about, is the guy who is the personification of evil. He represents Satan in this show. She's like, "Why, Ben, would you go back to that guy who is so evil?" And Ben says, "I can't forgive myself for all that I've done. You all will never forgive me. He's the only one that'll have me." And she looks at him and she says, "I'll have you." And she drops her gun and she walks away. And from that moment on, Ben has this major conversion. And the rest of the series, he's trying to make amends for all the bad he's done. But why did he experience that conversion? Because that lady chose to see in Ben his goodness. What he didn't think he deserved himself, she saw in him. She chose to love him in that moment. So we want to forgive. What's the third thing we need? We need to have the eyes that see the goodness in the other. We need God's grace, the free will choice, and eyes that see the good in the other person. These scriptures are one of the scriptures that are very easy to preach on because our gospel, it's very clear. We get it. There's not a lot of explanation you need from me. Here's this wonderful parable from Jesus where you have this owner who has this servant who owes him all of this unpayable amount. He would need to work for over 200 years every day to pay it back. It's not possible. He could never pay it back. His debt's been canceled and forgiven. And yet he went to someone else and demanded that he be paid back for a much smaller amount. My friends, if Jesus Christ can cancel and forgive our debt that we could never pay back, how could we not cancel the debts of those in our lives and forgive them as well, to love and to choose to love them with God's grace and to see their goodness as a beloved child of God?